right, well, I've got everyone's attention. Let's go ahead and get started. So, my routine welcome. Welcome to another exciting meeting of the Michigan City Redevelopment Commission. Good evening to all of you. I'm so excited about where this community is going, and I just want to reemphasize you've got a dedicated group of people here at the front of the room on the Redevelopment Commission, and all those in the audience too that care about the future of the city, and we're all just trying to work together to make it a better place. So with that, we call the meeting to order, and Deb, if you let the notes reflect that everyone's here with the exception of Teresa Edwards, our representative from the school corporation, and John Sheets, our commissioner. So our next item is, we have a 23-item agenda tonight, so hopefully we'll be able to work it through within about 4 or 5 hours and get everybody out here, maybe 9 or 10, so we'll see. Alan, do you have any comments relative to our previous meeting?
There was a executive session immediately before this meeting. No items were discussed that were not permitted by the open door law. No decisions were made.
All right. Thank you. And then item number 3, take a look at the minutes, please, for the executive session on June 10th, the special meeting on June 10th, the regular meeting on June 10th, special meeting on June 21st, and the executive session on June 24th, and the special meeting on June 24th also. So,
Chairman,
yes.
I'd move to approve the executive session minutes of 6:10, special meeting is 6:10, the regular meeting is 6:10, the special meeting is 6:21, executive session is 6:24, and the special meeting is 6:24.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion or corrections? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Mr. Phillips, are you about ready for the claims? I'm sorry, the claims docket for July.
So you should have a claims docket in front of you dated July 8th, 2019. On that, you'll note standard payroll for June of 2019. Claims to the operating fund include payment to Alan Cernick for monthly retainer for June of 2019, payment for me for travel reimbursement for the One Region project, corporate payment systems for travel expenses also related to that same trip. Claims to the North TIF fund include PRs, lawn care, for landscape maintenance, various properties owned by the Redevelopment Commission. Payments to the city controller for reimbursements of wired lease payments for Lafayette Barker and Elston Grove bond payments. Barnes and Thornburg for legal services in the North TIF ending 5/31/19. Fidelity National Title for title work associated with properties located in the North TIF. Reprographic Arts for reproduction of brochures related to the Civic Plaza project. Kim Raniger for work related to the Civic Plaza project. August Mack for legal services regarding the Trail Creek Properties litigation matter. Garrett Construction for partial pay application number 7 for the Washington Park West parking lot project, and for the pay application number 8, which is the release of the retainage for that project. John Doyle and Associates for survey of property owned by the Redevelopment Commission in the North TIF. PR's Land Care for additional landscape maintenance of properties owned by the Redevelopment Commission in the North TIF. Blue Shadley, Racher, and Braun for legal services related to the Trail Creek Properties litigation matter. SEH of Indiana for ongoing project costs related to engineering for the Washington Park traffic circle entry and parking lot projects. Antero Group for costs related to the Waste Inc. project for May of 2019. Alan Cernick for legal fees to the North TIF for June of 2019. Hitchcock Design Group for design service costs related to Civic Plaza Phase 1. Skyline Plastering for project costs related to the ethos and stucco aspects of the Blue Chip Casino expansion project. EC Babilla for costs related to the roofing portion of the Blue Chip Casino Expansion Project, and American Structure Point for costs related to the US 12 over Trail Creek project for the month of April of 2019. Claims to the South TIF include payments to PR's Lawn Care for landscape maintenance for various properties owned by the Redevelopment Commission in the South TIF, and 3 claims to the City Controller for reimbursements for wiring of lease payments for bonds, for 3 different bonds in the South TIF for the 2015, 2011, and 2018 bonds in the South TIF. Haas and Associates for costs for project construction administration in the Mariplex Drive project. News Dispatch for notice to bidders regarding the Bozak Honda project, and Alan Ciernik for costs related or for legal services in the South TIF. Claims to the Ohio Street Construction Fund include pay application number 12 to Reith Riley Construction Company, and pay application number 12 release of retainage for the Ohio Street project. American Structure Point for construction inspection costs for May of 2019. There were no claims to the Wabash Street Fund, and there was a debt service payment to U.S. Bank for the Northeast TIF, and that's all the items on the claims.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the commissioners? What's the pleasure of the commission?
Let me just make one comment with regards to my claims, just so that you're aware of this. Once again, we get held hostage on publication costs. Included in my claim for the North TIF was approximately $1,000 for notice costs for the properties we're acquiring through tax certification. So, paid them, but it's not my contract.
So it didn't all go into your excellent labor.
Waste $1,000.
We're following the law, so I don't think it was necessarily waste. Thank you. All right, what's the pleasure?
Motion to approve.
Support. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. So let's go over the financial report for May 31st.
Okay, you should have a balance sheet in front of you dated May 31st, 2019. On that, under the cash column, you'll note the operating account has a balance of $281,977.68. The South Side TIF account has a balance of $12,751,879.33. The South Side TIF debt reserve account has a balance of $336,308.50. The South Side TIF capital account has a balance of $17,670.72. The North End TIF account has a balance of $3,804,268.43. Wabash Street Streetscape Construction Fund has a balance of $122,341.56. The Wabash Street Streetscape Debt Reserve account has a balance of $216,072.49. The Northeast TIF account has a balance of $112,702.52. Bringing all total cash on hand to $17,643,221.23. Loans receivable include a loan to the East Side TIF from the operating account of $21,028.49. County bond and our portion of the County Business Loan Fund of $133,333. So total loans receivable of $154,361.49. Brings our total assets to $17,797,582.72. And just as noted before, some of these, it sounds like a lot of different accounts. A number of these accounts, beyond the standard TIF accounts, are associated with bonds that have been taken out by the Redevelopment Commission. And with regard to the Southside TIF and the Wabash Street accounts that are listed, those amounts are likely to be applied to the first payments for the repayment of the bonds associated with those. So we'll start to see those numbers change soon.
Sure. All right. Any question on the financial report? What's the pleasure of the commission?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you.
Gentlemen.
Let's move on to Mr. Units, request for funding for the feline house at the zoo.
Good evening, Commissioners, Mr. Phillips and Mr. Siernick. Jeremy Keenitz, Superintendent of the Michigan City Park Department. Pleasure to be here this evening. Also have Mr. Scott Kukta from Hassan Associates here with specific questions that might be related to the proposal itself, and staff from the Washington Park Zoo, including Zoo Director Jamie Huss, and then we also have Zoo Society President and current City Councilman Johnny Stimley here as well for any further questions that might need to be had if I'm not able to answer them. But on Wednesday, April 17th of this year, the Michigan City Park Board voted unanimously to accept the proposal from Hassan Associates to complete the design and engineering services for the feline house expansion at Washington Park Zoo. As a part of that motion, they instructed me to seek funding through the Redevelopment Commission for this project. We worked with Hassan Associates on the proposal that they provided that you should have a copy of. And at the end of the day, this goes to furthering our Washington Park Zoologic, our strategical plan that we are very proud of. And if you haven't visited the zoo lately, or it's been a while since you have, every time you go in there, I swear there's something different. It's absolutely beautiful there. The staff does a fantastic job, and we wouldn't be where we're at without not just the staff, but the Zoo Society support as well, as the Redevelopment Commission and the Michigan City Council. But with that, the overall ask that we are here for this evening is in the amount of $71,500. And again, that is for the design and engineering services for the feline house expansion. This does include a $7,500 allowance for estimated geotech services that might need to be completed, and would not exceed this amount. We are confident that this would be this would fulfill that, and maybe Mr. Kukta could, if interested from the Commission, could speak a little further on the cost, what that $71,500 goes towards, and how we're confident that that is the final cost or the top cost that we will need for this project.
So just to clarify for me, if you would, so the $71,500 is the total request from the commission, because there were some other numbers on the page relative to the proposal. Are those going to be picked up by
Correct. If once the design and engineering services are completed for that $71,500, the additional $5,500 for bidding and procurement services, we would look to add that into the overall request of the overall project, if we're able to seek funding for that down the road.
And the same goes for construction services as well?
Correct.
Okay.
So well, so let me just continue to characterize it here a little bit. So I think in our last meeting we agreed that we were supportive of doing the engineering design. I'm not sure, well, yes, but the way he's wording it here is, are you expecting to come back to the commission and ask for construction support also?
Once we get the design and engineering services completed for that $71,500, it would be a conversation amongst the park board, working with the mayor as well to figure out the process of moving forward. So I at this point can't really necessarily answer that yes or no. But our hope is that in some way, shape, or form, that whether it's a combination or other sources of funding that we're able to receive, that we can see this project through once we get to that point.
And maybe you could just describe a little bit of the project. So it's the feline, the cat house. What's the right term? So
Absolutely.
Good evening, Scott Cooked with Hazen Associates. Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, it's the Big Cats exhibit expansion. It's the kind of first exhibit that's on your left when you walk into the new zoo. They're big animals, and it's a confined space. Of course, a lot of the zoo is challenged with space. So, working with Jeremy and Jamie, we've looked at expanding that current exhibit pretty much as far as we can go without drastically changing the zoo plan in terms of keeping pedestrian and maintenance traffic free to go through there. So it would expand, it ends up expanding, primary expansions to the south about 23 feet, and that adds about 3,345 square feet to the exhibit. So every square foot matters for those big cats. So that's over 3,300 square feet.
sounds like another house.
It's mostly outdoor exhibit space, to be clear. This is not. We're doing some modifications to the existing conditioned building in terms of actually it used to serve a different function. It was a public entrance on that south side that'll actually be closed and turned into animal space. So again, it's all about the animals as part of this project. But for the visitors, of course, that's important too. So part of the project includes 23 new 4-foot by 8-foot animal viewing glass windows. So that's over 730 square feet of new glass. And then the primary feature of the new walls, currently it's basically a kennel construction with steel posts and a steel grid wire frame. The new one will be designed to match the basic style of the carnivore exhibit to the south that was done a few years ago that we were involved with as well. That has a naturalized fake rock made out of gunite sprayed concrete look. So it looks more like a natural habitat that you would see the animals in the wild. So that's the basic gist of the project. It really expands that outdoor exhibit space for the animals and provides some functional improvements in terms of accessing the animals for the zookeepers from inside the existing building. The part of the cost of our proposal is we have to do, of course, a preliminary survey of the existing facilities to do the construction documents. So in that 71.5, 20,100 is pre-design services, what we call pre-design. So some geotechnical exploration. I want to make sure those new walls and foundations are strong so the animals stay where they're supposed to stay. The primary
animals in the cage.
Yeah. So the primary design engineering services is 51,400, a little bit under 8.5% of the estimated total construction costs, which is just north of 600,000. As we've done it. Now, this kind of cost can vary for the actual construction, so that's part of the reason we've provided an estimate range for those construction services. Depending on the contractor selected, the ultimate materials and how that's constructed, it's a little bit of a specialty construction. Those services might depend on the contractor selected and what that looks like when we get to that point.
So in essence, the project's approximately a $600,000 overall project, which should significantly improve Washington Park Zoo, create something great for the residents and the visitors. And the request before the Redevelopment Commission is for design engineering of $71,500 this evening, and that I understand that you're working with some other either departments or entities to pick up the remainder of the $600,000. Right?
Jeremy, you want to speak to the grants and donations in place already? Okay.
Johnny Stimley, I'm president of the Zoological Society. When it comes to some of the funding, and I know we have the zoo director here too, we do get enrichment money from the blue chip. We do have $200,000 saved for that, and we also have a $100,000 grant from the SACA Auto Foundation, which will be going towards the project. So we have somewhere around $300,000 already for the project if it goes forward. And with the SACA Auto grant, also when you talk about that, they actually give us the grant, but they put a specific project which they wanted to go for, and that's what they would want it to go for.
And so this is a dedicated grant specifically for this project.
Yes.
It's part of their requirements. Okay.
I hope I was right on that, Jamie.
All right. It sounds like I love the idea of having multiple funding sources for great projects. So, are there any questions from the commissioners? What's the pleasure of the commission?
Motion to approve?
Support.
So, when the clarification is it's for $71,500 as requested. Mr. Phillips?
Just if this is approved, Scott, if we could just revise this proposal so that it reflects that what we are signing, it reflects only what we're paying for. Actually, I guess I'm a little bit confused. Is it going to be paid for by, is the contract going to be signed by the Parks Board or the Zoological Society? Just paperwork wise, I've got something here saying that we should sign it, but I'm actually not sure we're the ones that should sign this.
So the proposal went to the Park Board and was approved by the Park Board. We're just seeking the Redevelopment Commission as a
Okay.
funding source.
Okay, so we're not signing anything tonight. We're just approving the dollar amount then.
Okay.
I just want to make sure. we're
Yeah,
clear.
it's like I love getting the clarity because
Absolutely.
sometimes after the meeting things kind of change. So
Sure.
Thanks.
All right, so we have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you for coming too. And I do want to thank the representation from the park department also, and Johnny, of course, here, good support of the zoo too, because we really appreciate these being community meetings, and if you really want something cool in the zoo, it's nice to have a few people show up and say we need it. So thank you. All right. Anything else on the feline house? Okay, let's move on to item number 7, Ohio Street. Rich, look a little different tonight.
Dressed up. Chris Murphy with Structure Point. Commissioner, Rich Steele is on vacation this week, so I'm going to ask John Gorsica to provide the update on the Ohio Street report. It's essentially about finished with all the punch list items, but John, if you could follow up with a few words.
Good evening, everybody. John Gorsica with the Michigan City Sanitary District. I've been overseeing the Ohio Street project construction-wise since May of 2018. We're at a point where our punch list items are just about done. There's just some general cleanup that needs to be done behind the curb. Last thing that we did was redid the pavement markings down along Ohio Street. Arrows, the only stop bars, and striping, we redid those because they didn't adhere through the winter months, and with the plowing and some salting, we had to redo them. So right now we're at a point when Rich gets back, we're going to review the punch list items, but if there's one item or two items left on that punch list item, that's all that's left. We're like, ivory soap, 99 and 4,400%, done. So that's what I have to say about the project. So if there's any questions.
So Craig, any comments?
Do we need to keep this as an item on our agenda, or are we pretty much wrapped up at this point? Do we still have a notice? We have a final notice of acceptance of improvements, or
Correct. When the final
we signed the
part-
substantial completion.
Yes.
And is there a final document that we have to sign, basically saying the project is closed out?
Yes.
Okay, so we still have that.
I would keep it on the agenda
Okay.
until it's actually completed and we are closing it out.
I agree.
I just wanted to verify that. Okay, and then I'll also just make note, I think this is a good point to just make note that the bond proceeds that we receive for the Ohio Street project exceed the cost of the project, and therefore the remaining bond proceeds are going to be used to do substantial improvements for drainage and paving work in the Southgate neighborhood on Village Road, as well as Crestwood, I believe, in the vicinity of those two streets. So there's about $1.5 million worth of additional work that's going to be done in the Southgate neighborhood, specifically with the remaining bond proceeds from the Ohio Street project. And those approvals, we made those approvals at the last meeting, I believe. So
another point, I guess, on that is there's, at least rumor has it, there's been some long-term water issues in that portion of town, and that should address them, correct?
some of them. Substantially, yeah, that's,
Okay.
yeah, so it's
The point was, is the road
it's
project helped us put some more
standing
storm
water in
sewers
backyards
Right.
and drainage related issues in that neighborhood. That's why we're doing the additional work.
Yeah, my understanding is it'll supplement the work that we did with Ohio Street, which provided
Exactly.
a significant improvement to the flooding in that area.
And we had designed
as
the
part
Ohio
of the road
Street project to be able to basically have those improvements tie directly into
Correct.
what was done with Ohio Street.
Well, and it helped one of our businesses expand too, right? Is that correct?
Correct. We also
Distance.
helped. So we also helped
Hearthside.
Hearthside Foods expand to the property to the south by expanding the size of the culvert that goes under Ohio Street to allow for passage of equipment and vehicles north and south from one building to another as part of the project.
All right. Any questions on Ohio Street? All right. Moving on to your next item, that Mr. Murphy might talk about US 12 bridge update.
US 12 bridge, very brief. As you know, NDOT has let the project, and the city has provided payment to NDOT for their portion of the work. At our request, at the city's request, NDOT won't start the construction of that work until later on this year, early next year, so that all the work can be completed in one construction season, which will be the 2020 construction season.
So it's least disruptive to traffic and
Correct.
the businesses that are affected by,
Because
and the city, for that matter.
the project calls for keeping one lane of traffic open at all times on the bridge, but it will slow traffic down as the current bridge operates with 2 lanes in each direction right now.
And to make it clear again, since we have a lot of members of the public present, that project would have happened regardless of the city's involvement. That was a project that was happening. It was slated for replacement by NDOT. We are simply making some enhancements to the aesthetics of the project as part of the payment that we made to NDOT.
Right.
And go ahead.
So I just want to note the one item you do have left on your agenda is a determination on some of the railing elements that we may want to ask NDOT to consider.
So when do we need those by?
I don't have an exact date, but I probably within the next 30, 60 days or so,
Okay.
because those elements will have a lead time.
I think we had talked about trying to make a decision in August,
Right.
by the end of August.
Right. Even though the actual railing installation itself won't occur until
Right.
the end of the project, it would still be better to have the contract include those elements with the lead time on the railing itself.
Okay. I know we've had a couple suggestions come in for what should be on it, so I assume we'll consider that at our August meeting.
Most likely.
August or September. So, all right. Any
Very
other
good.
questions on US 12 overpass? So,
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, John.
all right. 709 Franklin Street update.
Steven's here.
Good evening, I'm Steve Travis, Americo Engineering. So I believe you were given a copy of change order number 2 for the demolition project 709 Franklin Street. During demolition, a concrete vault was discovered west of the building, behind the building, and where the asphalt parking lot was previously. So we've put together a change order here for $4,850 to remove the concrete vault, backfill and compact the soil.
And any contaminants or anything in the vaults or anything?
Nothing was identified suspect of contamination. So.
Right. All right. Mr. Phillips, is you recommending this?
So I reviewed this and spoken with Mr. Travis about this, and I would recommend approval.
It's a pleasure of the commission.
Just say one more thing, Tim. This was an unforeseen circumstance since you didn't know it was there.
Correct.
Okay, just for the record.
Move for approval of this change order.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? About when will it be done?
They should be done by next week. I've reached out to PR, waiting to hear back when they can fit us in the schedule to do the sod. So hopefully by the end of next week, depending
By the
on
end of the
PR.
month, more or less, yeah.
Obviously, we've had some delays due to weather substantially related to this project, so
All right.
we're staying pretty close to on track what we expected, I think, for the farthest out timeframes that we had talked about for this.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
so Acton had some already scheduled obligations, and they weren't expecting the change orders to push them back, so they're off site right now, but they'll be back the beginning of next week. So.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Appreciate it.
All right. So let's move on to Civic Plaza update. Mr. Phillips.
So the first item of business to take care of is an amendment to the contract for preliminary design services, and I'll have Joel Bolden from Hitchcock Design Group come up and explain to us what the amendment consists of. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Joe Balden, Hitchcock Design Group. Thanks for letting me be here tonight. Craig's putting me on the spot. I didn't know I was presenting. So this is Amendment 2, which is...
Was for the additional consulting services related to.
I have it on page 2 at 8,400. Is that correct?
sorry, guys. I'm totally unprepared. I can't remember what I did yesterday anymore. So. What was
Those are the additional trips, correct?
Yes.
It's the additional 2 visits.
Oh, it's additional 2 visits for, thank you, for Rapid City Inc., for Dan Senfer, to attend 2 of our additional stakeholder meetings, for total amount of $8,400 with additional reimbursables of $4,000.
So a total of $9,400.
Yep.
What's your recommendation, Mr. Phillips?
I reviewed this previously when it was proposed, and again, it's regarding having Mr. Semfner present for the workshop as well as for the council meeting, the upcoming council meeting. So I'd recommend approval.
And he's the Rapid City, South Dakota expert on plazas, correct?
The destination, Rapid City.
All right. Any other questions? What's the pleasure of the commission?
Move to approve.
Support.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Joel. Let's move on to, let's open up the public hearing for the lease of the Civic Plaza project, and this is part of the.
Actually, let's have Mr. Facenda come up and
Yes, exactly.
introduce this. Yeah.
Thanks, Craig. Members of the commission, Phil Facenda from Barnes & Thornburg in South Bend. I'm here actually standing in for Randy Rampola, who is out of town this week. The resolution, really what we should do is explain the resolution and what's before you, and then we can open up the public hearing.
Okay.
And take any public comment. The resolution 319, and you will recall at your meeting on June 10th, you approved the form of the lease that will be part of this financing. The financing is the construction of the Civic Plaza, and just to refresh everyone's memory, that is a approximate 1.5 acre project at the corner of Franklin and 7th Streets. The project includes new festival space, a new stage for live performances, art installations, a splash pad, children's play area, and a multi-purpose community building. The Redevelopment Authority met on July 1st and approved the financing of this project, and the financing would take the form of bonds not to exceed $8.8 million that would be issued by the Redevelopment Authority. The proceeds of those bonds would be part of the would form the principal amount of your lease, and your lease financing. The Redevelopment Commission would lease the improvements. And as I said, this body previously approved the lease, but tonight's and you set tonight's date as the date for the public hearing on the lease. Just to refresh everyone's memory as well, or at least to spell out what's in the resolution, the lease amounts are not to exceed $975,000 a year, and that's the principal amount or that is the total amount or not to exceed amount for lease payments, and the lease is not to exceed 22 years in length. That lease amount corresponds to debt service on the bonds. So the Redevelopment Commission pays the debt, or pays the lease, and the Redevelopment Authority pays the debt service on the bonds. The resolution before you finds that the lease rental is fair and reasonable, and that it serves public purposes for the city and the citizens of Michigan City. A little bit about steps from here as well. In the event that there's a favorable passage of the resolution tonight, the Common Council would take up this matter on July 16th. And you are also authorizing additional publications of notices that are set forth in the resolution, including the notice of execution of the lease, which would take place if the Common Council should approve the form of the lease as well. At this point, I'm happy to take any questions about the resolution, and you can also proceed to open the public hearing.
All right, so, do you have questions? Just to briefly, for the audience, if you will. So you might describe the redevelopment authority's involvement in this, as well as the commissions and how the lease actually works.
Yeah. So redevelopment authorities are if everyone is familiar with building corporations, it is you are under Indiana law. There's a debt limit. Every governmental unit is subject to a constitutional debt limit, as is the redevelopment district. You can enter into, if the redevelopment commission were to do a special benefits tax, which, by the way, these bonds would be backed by a special benefits tax with anticipated. It's reasonably anticipated that the TIF revenues from the Northside TIF would cover the debt service. So it is not anticipated that a tax will be levied. It simply serves as a backup to the TIF revenues. The function of the lease is that if you were to undertake this as just a special benefits tax bond by the redevelopment commission, you would eat into or perhaps eliminate your debt limit, which would not allow you to issue additional general obligation or special benefits tax backed bonds in the future should you have an emergency or anything along those lines. So this lease structure allows you to enter into a transaction of this size without eating into your debt limit. That's essentially the reason.
I think the other major thing it offers is does it also offer a lower interest rate? As we're
Yeah, so your interest rate exactly on the point of the special benefits tax. Mm-hmm. So the special benefits tax is there that would be levied by the commission if necessary. Not anticipated to be there, but the bond world loves the backup of the tax, and
I was under the impression that the bonding organization actually we get a better interest rate because we're using the city's bonding capacity, the bonding
within by the authority.
Exactly. That's what we did on Ohio Street. Okay. Saved several $100,000 maybe.
Right. Well, that plus the special benefits tax, I think, will get you what you're referring to in terms of a favorable interest rate.
All right. And then I also understand that at least was discussed the provision here that could be refinanced after some period of time.
Yes. So I don't think you have set forth your call provisions yet, but those are allowed in here. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's not specifically spelled out in here, but it does create that opportunity.
Exactly. At the time that you price the bonds, you can.
So we price the bonds. They give us an interest rate. Decide whether or not we still want to go ahead with the project.
Right.
And then decide whether or not we want to have a call option.
This allows us to have the call as an option.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to try to clarify that. It's obviously complex. So, any more questions? All right. Okay. So, now we open the public
At this
hearing.
point, you'd open up a public hearing.
All right. So, is there any member from the public would like to testify? Please state your name and where your address. I'm sorry.
Amy Straka, pardon me. Amy Straka, 108 Trunk Court. So, originally, I was in support of this project when I first heard about it because I thought it was going to be a park. I thought it was going to be free and open to the public. And I thought it was something that would be seeking grants for that were specifically earmarked for projects like this. But it didn't turn out that was the case. As this process has unfolded over time, it seems like what's actually happening is we're going to be borrowing almost $9 million to create a space that would be open to the public if they had money to pay admission to the mini events or enroll in classes, or if the corporations that they worked for rented it out, that a private organization would be running the day-to-day events, not anyone elected or held in any accountability to the public for what happens there. It will be policed by private security. That this project would expect $800,000 plus in revenue to be coming in each year for its $800,000 operating budget, half of which it looked like was from people paying to attend different things there. When I first heard about this project, I envisioned something where people from the community, the whole community, not just investors, not just tourists from Illinois, not just people who hold all the power, but everybody, including the 53% of residents that are living paycheck to paycheck or worse, would be able to come together in a public space to do things. Then you see the presentation talking about water features with different colored lights, ice bumper cars. Those aren't exactly the youth programs that people are talking about. Because when you knock on the doors in this city and talk to actual regular folks, not folks that want to hedge their bets on property that they bought around the plaza, not people that are promising a bunch of revenue and foot traffic to a handful of businesses that are struggling to survive and pinning their wishes and hopes on the success of this. If you ask regular people what they want youth programs that are free, plenty of parks and public spaces, cooperations with schools to be able to make those things happen. No one's borrowing $9 million to do youth programs. Nobody's borrowing $9 million to provide different child care services, things for early childhood. Nobody is taking $9 million and providing expanded public transportation or really assisting any people who are vulnerable at all. It seems like the city's reluctant to go out on a limb like this for things like that, but will pay $9,000 to bring someone from another city who has a plaza to tell us how nice their interactive water features are. So I'm here, and I'm a member of Organized United Residents of Michigan City, a group that is made up of actual people that live in the city, that talk to actual people that live in the city every day and work here and raise families here. We're opposing this project. This should be a field of grass at this point. It's a waste of money. It shouldn't be something that happens with a board of folks that don't represent the people in the city making decisions about it. That's why it's going to city council after this. They're the ones that decide, and they are accountable to the people of Michigan City. And the people of Michigan City will hold them accountable for that decision.
Thank you. So just a general comment. We've spent a lot of time and effort to try to inform the public and have had several workshops. So Amy, did you attend any of the workshops?
I did attend some of the workshops, but to be clear, just because something is open to the public doesn't mean it's designed for them. And when you invite people to come and talk about what kinds of things they want for the plaza, the kinds of discussions that were happening at these were at a beer festival you had to pay to get into, where people were writing what they wanted to envision on a chalkboard, or bringing people together during the workday to talk about what they might want in the plaza. We don't want to pick the decorative LED uplighting. We don't want to choose the sculptures or the font on the brochures. This project was happening, and these meetings and workshops were meant to decide what happened with the project. We don't want the project to happen. That's why we show up now, because now we actually can weigh in on whether or not this money's borrowed, and it won't be.
Thank you. Other members of the public?
Hi, my name is Valerie. I live at 305 Decatur Street. I came here tonight to speak in opposition of the Civic Plaza. RMC, Organized United Residents of Michigan City, recently surveyed many neighborhoods throughout Michigan City. We knocked individually on over 1,000 doors, asking residents what it was they wanted to see in Michigan City. Overwhelmingly, the answers were safe and affordable housing, improved public transportation, youth programs, and free childcare. Never was a Civic Plaza mentioned, not once. Many parents like myself can hardly afford childcare as it costs nearly as much as our own rents do. We need that $9 million bond, if we're going to borrow money, to be fed into programs like free childcare, which can improve the lives of children and parents all over Michigan City, not just the few that can afford to attend festivals at the Civic Plaza. So I am absolutely against this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public?
My name's Allison Workentine. I live at 2510 Elston Street. So right now, a quarter of Michigan City residents are living in poverty. So things like sidewalks and public transportation, as mentioned earlier, are extremely important in the day-to-day lives for those people and many other people in Michigan City. The closing of neighborhood grocery stores has made it difficult to buy fresh fruit and product that's anywhere near close walking distance. So now these things are miles and miles away, forcing people to use public transportation and sidewalks. So to me, spending almost $9 million on a plaza is flat out ridiculous when we don't even have sidewalks and public transportation for all of our residents here. What we need desperately is more stops, shelters at those stops, and also a bus that runs 24/7. I live off Ohio Street. There's a bus stop and it's a pole in a guy's yard. That's it. There's no shelter, there's no nothing. If people stand there in a muddy area waiting for the bus because they have nowhere else to be, it's just a wide open space. And that's just one example. There's many stops that are like that are in need of shelters, and we don't even have enough stops right now. So this is just one example of what this money could be spent for. As being mentioned previously, people are giving other examples, but this is an absolutely ridiculous amount of money to be spending on something that is just a plaza that nobody wants. Nobody wants a plaza, but we need better public transportation. So I am wholeheartedly opposed to this.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? There's a microphone there, and I think there's one in the corner too, so either one. Just one at a time, please.
Hi, I'm Cassandra DeVries, 1311 Elston Street. So in the beginning, I, like some other people, was very interested in something new that was, again, open to the public, to the community. It's kind of what it sounded like when it was first brought to our attention. It was like, hey, we're on this. It's going to be great for everyone. And so we did. You know, we filled out the surveys. We were all about it. I want to let you know I've lived in Michigan City since I was 12. I've run community events, and I attend almost as many artistic events in the city as I can. So what I want to bring to your attention is the ones that cost upwards of $20 don't really bring in a lot of people. It seems like they're marketed to people out of town, and therefore that's what they will receive. Not a lot of locals, and it's not very packed. Swale Music Fest, for example, had 3 stages, didn't have enough people to be at one. I'm not against Swale Music Fest, it was a great time, but I'm just saying, in general, you're expecting to receive $800,000 a year from this event place, a venue, sorry, and I just don't see it. I have been doing the research myself for many years because I would like to see something done on a smaller scale, but not in this location. You're talking about closing 7th Street, which is a very busy street, especially during times when it's congested in that area. When there are events going on at the beach or in the downtown arts district, it gets very congested. There's a lack of parking on your day-to-day basis. People are parking in the uptown arts lofts, which aren't supposed to be for public parking, but they're parking there. They're also parking in the streets. We're finding places and you have to walk. Well, in the wintertime, you're not going to get the people to walk. I work currently in the Lighthouse Mall, and I have been for most of my adult life. I do tell people every day about the Arts District because, believe it or not, many people don't know. One of the main things that we have that, or I should say, that Valpo has that we don't, and we're obviously marketing after them, so we should look at the other things that they've done too. They built up their district long before they put a plaza in, as well as they focused on their city before they started doing this. Their schooling system is years ahead of us. I started in Valpo and I came here and I was 2 grades ahead of everyone else. And that's because in Valpo they put their priorities first. And I know I don't want to get off the subject, but you know, we want to keep moving forward as a city. When we do things like this, but without looking at the other things, we're not helping our city. You may bring tourism for a small time, but you're also going to bring also crime and homelessness. And then when there's no place to park, you're doing nothing but hurting those businesses that you're saying you want to bring that foot traffic to. I currently have a hard time finding parking in that area. And I do like to shop in the Arts District because I want to support local businesses. But when I have to walk a few blocks in October, I'm sorry, but my chunky self is not going to do it. And I'm not the only one. And if you're going to open an event venue with, I looked at the map myself, I see how much parking there is, you're barely adding any, and then they're saying, oh, well, there's going to be a parking garage when the double tracks come in. Oh, so you're going to steal more parking from other people? So I just don't understand why you would not foresee that. Don't close 7th Street. And if you want to open something like that, it would make more sense to make it a community place with a community center, a small park, picnic benches, stuff like that, and additional parking, because it's something that we're really lacking in that area. If you wanted to build something that's a giant venue that's going to bring in big business, major label performers, you should maybe think about like Marquette Mall, bulldozing that place and redoing that, because you would have more availability for parking. But also, we should be looking at sponsorship and not getting a giant loan to us when we don't have that TIF funds in that side of town, and we're already doing a major project at the beach. So it's like continuously adding to those funding that we're asking for. But what is really the payout? Do we really foresee it? And I, as a community member, I don't. And I'm against this project at this level that they're asking for.
Thank you, Sandra. Other members of the public?
Hi, Sarah Johnson, 106 Garden Trail. After working for several years with hundreds of families at Head Start and working with RMC knocking on thousands of doors, I feel like I can say with utmost certainty that this plaza is a complete waste of money. This is not a neighborhood public park like Gardenia Park or Pullman Park that's created for and intended for Michigan City residents. This is a public-private partnership intended to create revenue and cater to investors and out-of-town tourists in order to drive foot traffic to the downtown businesses. I've said this many times before, and I'll keep saying it, our community is not a playground for developers to create weekend getaways for Chicago folks, residents that are coming through Michigan City and heading into Michigan. This city is home to 30,000 people, many of whom their basic needs are not even being met. And I saw this article in it was the Herald Argus, I think it was in the News Dispatch too, but that guy that came here from Rapid City was talking about this plaza being the living room to the downtown. And what I was thinking the whole time is that until every single person, adult and child, in this city has a safe and affordable place to lay their head, you should all be ashamed for even asking for $9 million for a living room for our downtown. Thanks.
Thank you. Other comments or questions from the public?
Sorry. So, my name's Rob Johnson. I live at 106 Garden Trail, and I'm going to repeat some of the things that people have said today, but I kind of want to talk about what this project would actually mean for Michigan City, and what it would mean to the people here. So, unlike what kind of gets sold on a lot of this stuff, Michigan City is not a collection of buildings in like an area, and it's not a group of businesses looking for revenue. As Sarah said, it's 31,000 individual people. That's who the city is. And of those 31,000 people, as people have said, half or so are working poor. When they're done with their bills and their food and their rent at the end of the month, that's it. That's half your population. Half of our population rents. They do not own the property they live in. As people said, 20% are in poverty, but more importantly, 44% of children live in poverty in this city. And what would this project really mean for them? As opposed to what this project would mean for developers or major landowners or the guy who owns the bulldozer that's going to build the project, I want to talk about what it would mean for the 31,000 people. So there's really two scenarios. First, this project is successful. As we look, in state law, the point of a redevelopment commission is really, at the end of the day, to raise property values. That's the point. This spurs development. It's more about, okay, so let's say it's successful. You build this project, it's successful, property values go up around the city. Now, what does that really mean? Property values don't necessarily mean more new jobs. For example, for whatever people have said and I've heard them talk about, no one's going to build like a big aluminum smelter here because there's a park. Nobody's going to, like, it's dependent on logistics. Industrial development's dependent on logistical things and how you relate to markets and consumers and everything else. It's not going to suddenly happen. There's no magic bullet coming. It's also not really going to do anything for wages. So if you increase property values in a building, they don't suddenly pay waitresses that much more, or bartenders, or people who work retail, maybe a little, and it's not going to be some huge growth. So if you have a retail establishment and hires 2 people, they're not going to hire 10. It's only open the same hours it's open just because they make more money. So what happens if suddenly property values go up, but we haven't drastically changed wages and we haven't drastically changed hiring? Well, when an apartment building costs $100,000 and it goes up to $400,000, rent goes up. So we've held wages and jobs probably pretty much flat, mild improvement, and raised the cost of living. And this isn't like rocket science. You just look around areas that have pursued this type of development, and you see people being displaced, leaving their homes. I lived in Fountain Square, Indianapolis, which is one of the textbook cases in Indiana for, look, we fancied it all up. Well, houses went from $60,000 to $300,000 while I was there. The people I was living around left, or they had to start living in even more subdivided housing. It's 10 people to a room. We're packing in. We're trying to get in, or you're leaving. So this is the effect of success, is you want to, for the benefit of people who own property, drive up the value of property, and otherwise just kind of hope things work out for everybody else. The second thing that I think we need to consider, well, and like I said, look at places where this model's been pursued. I mean, we're all talking about Rapid City, somewhere nobody's ever heard of. But I mean, look at places like Chicago, where the population shrunk by 30% while they built the skyline up higher and higher and higher. They're piling in wealth, and people are fleeing because you can't afford to live. Look at Atlantic City, which is dependent on tourism. There's other options of cities that are focused on this style of development than just the one you want to bring up. And ultimately what this is a form of speculation. You're just kind of hoping. And of course all speculation has the second scenario, which is failure. And I want to talk about that is, what would this mean if this project fails? If this nonprofit you've created can't raise its $900,000 a year, as many people with experience in the art scene have said it probably won't, or if you don't see the property values rise the way you want. I mean, we are overdue. I mean, recessions are cyclical, right? We're overdue for a recession. What happens when property values sink? Well, then we're just stuck. Unless you're going to somehow be able to just build this thing for $9 million, foist it on a nonprofit, and then go whoopsie-doodle. The city's going to be accountable for this money. Like was talked about, there's an emergency levy provision, where all of a sudden, if property values don't go up, if the economy doesn't boom the way you've predicted, you're then stuck just paying more taxes while you need more money for services. This is what we saw in 2008, right? This wasn't long ago. Speculative investment in property that doesn't really produce much. So I just have to ask the RDC, as you're thinking about this and taking it to the council, as a body, whose interests do you represent? Is it 15,000 renters? Is it 15,000 people just barely making their bills at the end of the month? Or is it a small group of land developers, of land owners, of people who are rich today and just want to be richer tomorrow? I want to ask, in this election year, who are you accountable to? I oppose this project, and I hope the City Council votes it down. Thank you.
Other members of the public. Mr. Przybylski, or should I say Mr. President? Yes.
Good evening, board members. I have one question, and that's on the amount of money that's being borrowed, proposed amount to be borrowed. What is the amount of interest that's going to be paid on that $8 million?
Andy, would you like to address that?
Because I think, in the paperwork here, we have $8.8 million. That's what the public's being told, $8.8 million. That's what the city council is being told, $8.8 million. What is the total cost of this project?
So, I mean, why don't you give them rough numbers, because we have bond proceeds, and then I guess the net of the two is the amount in interest, is that correct? Plus the cost for administration.
Sure.
Why don't you ask her as the expert?
Well, Andy Mauser with Baker Tilly. Our total amount being approved tonight would be that 8.8 million. Our current estimate of what the actual bond size would be right around 8.3 million. So there is some cushion in there for fluctuations in interest rates. As the bonds are not currently issued and the rates are not currently set, that gives obviously some flexibility in the approval process. And the total repayment over the 20-year term would be right around $11 million. So that does include the interest costs over that as well. But I would point out that the repayment on the plaza is very front-loaded. Again, as we've talked about in previous redevelopment commission meetings, we have structured the financing so that even though it goes through 20 years, over half the principal would be repaid in the first 8 to 10 years. So very front-loaded, which helps keep those interest costs down compared to what you'd see with a traditional 20 or 25-year structure.
So the answer to the question is approximately
Total.
4 million. What is the number?
Total principal and interest would be right around 11 million. So about 8.3 in principal and about another 3 million in total interest costs over the term.
8.3 million in principal. Thanks. So, and depending on the final design, it could be lower than the 8.3. It just depends on what we want to borrow, right?
Correct.
Right. And in essence, this is similar to what you do at your home, right? When you buy your home, you finance it over time rather than not being able to have a car or whatever else, and that you buy long-term things under long-term either mortgage, or in this case, the sale of a bond. Right?
Exactly. And in that case, where a mortgage, you would traditionally pay the same amount every month through the full 15 or 30 years. With this structure, we've tried to structure it so that the majority of the payments are in the first 8 to 10 years.
On the front end, so we're paying down the principal faster than if it had been even over the life of the 22-year bond.
Correct. And then you would have the opportunity, as we talked about before, to pay the bonds off at the 8 or 10-year mark.
And the other point I want to make is to correct one of the things here is that we anticipate, although the potential is to have the city back the bond, is that we have the funds currently in the anticipated tax increment financing stream of revenue over the course of the bond to easily pay off the bond and in effect do other projects. Is that correct?
Correct. Your current TIF collections are right around $4.3 million per year, and then your total debt service payments, which includes all outstanding debt and then the new potential plaza financing as well, would be right around half of that. And those TIF collections are based on things that are in the ground currently. Doesn't assume any future development, any future increases in property values. So you really have for every dollar of debt service, you have $2.
This is not a burden on community residents.
Correct.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Prismalinski, but I thought Andy could ask a question.
That's fine. I know that Andy's the finance man on this project, and that's fine. The reason for my question was number one, so that I know. I have other council colleagues here tonight. I didn't know if they knew what the total interest and the total amount was going to be. And just for transparency, so that the residents that are here this evening, they're reading 8.8, they're hearing 8.3. Well, the total project is going to be $11 million. So I think the public needs to know that as a point of transparency, because once it's passed, if it does get passed, you're looking at the bond, and then all of a sudden you're going to read in the paper the next day that, oh, this is an 8.3, this is $11 million, and the public will be saying, well, where did this come from? So I just wanted to get up here and ask that question so the folks that are here tonight that don't know this information now hear it, and they know what the information, they see the whole picture of what it's all about.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public?
Hi, Sarah Zawacki, 1209 York Street.
So I work at the local YMCA as the aquatics coordinator. I am also an assistant swim coach for the Michigan City Piranhas, represent. A lot of us just got our best times this past Friday. So $11 million, let me back up from this. $11 million would be a miracle for both of these organizations. And honestly, as somebody who has lived here for my entire life, has paid taxes in this community for my entire life, has worked here my entire life, I am really insulted that you think $11 million on a plaza that is only going to be operable for about 10 weeks out of the year because we have this wonderful thing called winter. I'm insulted by this fact, by you guys thinking that this is a good use of our money. There's an extreme lack of sports programming here in Michigan City. 53% of residents are living paycheck to paycheck, can barely make their bills. What is a $11 million plaza going to actually do to benefit their lives? 10 weeks out of the year is pretty much our summer, right? Like, we have winter. It was raining in May. It was snowing in May. Nobody is going to go to an outdoor plaza when it's 40 below. We also have to take into account that climate change is going to start really coming back to bite us in the butt. So a 30 or 40-year mortgage plan is not realistic. We have to deal with climate change now. These kids need something to do, and it's not going to be found at an outdoor plaza where there's probably going to be 21 and up events, probably going to be beer gardens, and the area where it's proposed is actually not a very accessible place for people. The bus stop's running at 5 p.m. Most people don't get off work until 5 p.m. There's a lack of parking in that area. I know because I actually lived in that neighborhood for a year. It's not an easy neighborhood to navigate. I know a lot of people that come to that neighborhood for the shopping, for the arts district, you know, whatever activities are going on there. They'll come and they leave because they can't find a place to park. Or they can find a place to park 4 blocks up the road, and then they don't want to walk 4 blocks to the place that they wanted to go, so they said, you know what, I'm just going to go to Lighthouse Mall instead, or you know what, I'll go to Valpo instead. So I want you guys to think about a few things. Lack of sports programs in the city, where $11 million would be a miracle. I can't even tell you the amount that we could do to the pool at Elston with $11 million. I mean, it would be a completely different place. What we could do with the Piranhas with $11 million, it would be a miracle. And the fact that this is just kind of like, oh, well, you know what? This is our idea. This is our little project. This is what we want to do. That's unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. And I do want to remind everybody on this board, which is appointed, by the way, not elected, that this is an election year. So let's keep that in mind as well. We don't have 30 years to pay off a plaza when we have 10 years, according to the latest climate scientist reports. We have 10 years to deal with climate change. A plaza is not going to help us with that. We need real solutions to these real problems going on. And this plaza is not going to solve any of those problems.
Thank you. Other members of the public?
I just have a question. The gentleman said that it won't be an issue for our future financial stuff with the projects that are currently in place, but does that include the new roundabout and the new condominium by the beach that will also be partially paid for out of TIF funds?
Well, number one, the condo project paid out of TIF funds. There is no condo project that's been approved by the city or the redevelopment commission. So that.
Not yet been approved, but it has been legacy apartments.
Oh, you're talking about the apartments or condos?
Apartments.
Yes, the apartment project on Pine Street is in the process. Well, you'll hear about it on the agenda in a few more minutes. It's in the process of being restarted again, and the idea is to have a higher concentration of people in the downtown, so that they can frequent the businesses and the new plaza. So
I mean, the financial burden, though, from the TIF.
I know.
Maybe I didn't word it correctly, but you said there will be no financial burden due to our current, bill.
But we have a budget relative to our future finances for the Redevelopment Commission, and we review that every year and present it to the City Council and the Redevelopment Commission on major projects that we are working on that are included in the Lake Michigan Gateway Implementation Strategy, which was adopted by the community, as well as our South Gateway project, which was adopted by the community. And those funds are coming from existing tax increment from existing businesses in those locations. It's not coming from residents. All right. So any other public comments?
So I just gotta make a point of clarification. That's Rob Johnson again, 106 Garden Trail. I guess that's only true if you don't consider TIF funds to be taxes and that nobody pays them. So it's tax funds that are diverted into your account instead of the city general fund or other funds. I mean, this is what a TIF is. It's you take an area, you flatten, you cut it off, what taxes are going to go into the general fund, and you take everything above that limit and put it in your tank. That's what TIF funding is. So it is taxes. It's just taxes that nobody was going to get because we've set up this structure where taxes get diverted by increments into another fund. Of course, the hope being that your activities will raise the value in that area such that, you make more money in the long run. But it is taxes, just because you put it somewhere else.
I'm not arguing that it's taxes.
So it is a burden. It's just it's
We
not
never
spread
said
the
that
same
it wasn't
way.
taxes.
Okay.
It's not going to result in an additional burden.
Unless it doesn't make money and you have to do the special levy as discussed at the beginning, and then it will.
Wow. Angie Nelson Deitch.
Angie Nelson Deitch, 126 Lady Lane. A little different question. It's more about construction. If you're going to construct this, how are you awarding bids? What's the process going to be? Have you already selected who these people are? So what's going to happen? Please share that with us if someone can go into that detail on how this is going to be awarded.
So there are two methods that we can use to consider construction of the project, and we have not yet determined which one of those two methods we're going to use. One would be a traditional bid system for large projects. The other one would be construction manager as contractor, which is a new clause in state law that's allowed to be extended to the city. But we haven't determined yet exactly which one of those two we're going to pursue.
Version 2, though, who selects that person?
I'm sorry?
Version 2, who selects the person for construction?
Who actually hires them?
The Redevelopment Commission in cooperation with the city.
And will comply with the hiring laws and the other requirements of the city. All right, anybody else from the public?
Kathy Stransky, 223 East Barker Ave, here in Michigan City. I just think that $11 million is bizarre, and we could do a lot on the neighborhood playgrounds. We could do much for the children in the neighborhoods. If you want to invest money, go to the parks that are already here. I'm talking Westcott, I'm talking Marsh, I'm talking Knapp, I'm talking anywhere where we have children that the parents are paying taxes, they're paying rent, and as far as the 7th Street blocks go there that you cleared off, sell it to a developer. We not only get the money from the sale of the property, but they would construct there, which would maybe put some of our people to work, and then they would pay property taxes forever to our county and our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from the public?
Just more of a question. So you keep answering everybody else's question, but both Amy
and
Rob have asked, who are you accountable to? And you guys just keep sitting there silent. So my take is that if you're sitting there silently, you're accountable to nobody.
That's not correct.
Okay, well, can you answer the question then?
There are a number of questions that have been asked, and actually there's quite a bit of misinformation that's been put out there, so we're being careful about how we respond to that misinformation. There are some things that have been put out that people assume are fact, which are not, and so we're being cautious about how we want to respond to those things. There were some questions that are directly factual, that are easy to answer, and there are others that there are statements that have been made about decisions that have been made or what this project is or isn't that are completely false and are probably misrepresentations. We could bring additional people up here to clarify some of those things, but I guess
that was the intent of the
I think we
workshop,
want to spend
however.
our time in that regard with the city council because that's ultimately where the decision is going to be made. So bring some more people to the table that can clarify those things. We're taking notes about the other questions that have been asked, and we'll clarify those things that as we've identified, those questions have been asked.
So let me.
We're not going to get into a give and take situation at this evening's meeting.
Yeah, we'd like to listen and understand and then present. So, to answer, yes, to answer your question, we are appointed by either the mayor or by the city council, and they have. What's that?
That's the only people you're accountable to.
Yes.
Well, who are ultimately accountable to?
Well, they're ultimately accountable to the public relative to their decisions and support of that.
If you're an elected official, you're accountable to all the residents, not just 15,000, but all 32,000 residents of the city of Michigan City. And so the city council has appointments, and so on this board commission, I'm the only elected official. However, the other appointments are either mine or the city council's. So ultimately, the city council, the mayor, are accountable to all the residents, not one portion, 32 or 15,000 here or there, all of them, which all have a variety of opinions on this situation and matter. So,
and the members of this board, members of this commission, take an oath of office.
So, and please again, is this Amy?
Yes.
Thank you, Amy.
I have a question just following up with what Craig was saying about how he's been taking down questions that people had and found some inaccuracies or things that you didn't find to be factual.
It's clear to us that we need to further explain what this project consists of and the public benefit and the specific elements of this project that are exactly what you're calling for and the things that you've heard from people in the community.
So do you feel
what I'm getting at.
Do you feel like all of those points weren't covered in the PowerPoint presentation that was presented to the RDC in their previous closed meeting? Or?
No, I'm just going to say this. We've gone to great lengths to have a very extended public outreach element of this project, and we've listened to what was shared with us in those meetings, and we have designed this project based on that input. This is not just we need to be very clear. This is not just a venue. This is not just something where you have to pay admission to attend. These are the kinds of statements that I'm talking about. There have been statements made about the fact that this is a playground for tourists, and actually, and I encourage you to visit the other communities that we've researched these types of projects in. These projects are not done for tourism. This is done for our own community. We listened to the members of our community and what they wanted in this project, and we have incorporated a large number of those things into this project. This project extends the educational learning opportunities for our community. There are a lot of elements. I think people are picking and choosing what they're hearing. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that's been presented about this project that is not being represented by the comments being made tonight, and that it is open to the public, and it is a benefit to the community in a number of ways. And we will be, I think, the point that we're making with regard to taking notes is we'll make sure that the presentation of the City Council further addresses those things that there obviously is miscommunication or misunderstanding about.
So I'm not going to ask a whole litany of questions because you said that you guys were dedicated to making sure that on the 16th you address those, but with the programming being up to 200 days a year, have you spoken about what percentage of that programming is going to be free, no charge, and open to the public?
Yes, we have. And,
what is that percentage?
We don't have a specific percentage, but a high percentage. The design really is for the community. Obviously, visitors will be able to participate and enjoy it. And we've spent a lot of time trying to answer exactly the same things that you're talking about, what the community wants to really have in a gathering place in our downtown.
And people said ice bumper cars?
Winter activities. People said they wanted to have winter activities. They wanted to extend the season. There was a comment made about this being for only 10 months of the year. That's not correct.
10 weeks.
Or 10 weeks of the year. That's not correct. There's a substantial amount of activity centered around extending the season, having winter activities, having fall activities, spring activities.
Well, and that's the other reason to have there will also be the administrative board and the advisory board, which will be made up of people to make sure that we are.
Who appoints them?
Pardon?
Who appoints them to this board?
Well, it's various organizations. We have it's the mayor's office, the city council, the chamber of commerce, the EDC, the school corporation, and some others to be determined yet to make sure that we have good representation from the city, from the broad community.
Thank you.
All right, any other public comments? Any other public comments? Any other public
I don't want
comments?
to be annoying, but I guess
Well, please, that's why we have the public period.
So,
As long as you can be direct and
I'm sorry if it felt like I didn't have accurate information. I got all of my information from the newspaper articles and articles written on the city's website. So I do want to just bring up a few things. Number one, when we were first brought to this again, we didn't think this was going to have such a high price tag. Have we looked at other options for payment, such as sponsorship or grants or anything like that, or are we just going straight into getting such a high loan?
do you want to try to address that, or?
Yeah, we are.
Well, there will be.
We do plan to seek sponsorships.
Yes, we do.
We do plan to seek grants where possible for the project. We only expend the proceeds as necessary, basically. So at the end of the day, as we actually go for the bond money, when we know what the actual final design of the project is and what the project will consist of, we'll know exactly what we're going to go pay for. We're asking for a maximum not to exceed amount when it comes to the bond. And in the meantime, we hope to augment the ask in terms of the authority for the bonding by seeking sponsors and other types of funding as well.
And part of the activity, this is a little chicken and egg to get the project actually off the ground, is having this board to actually run the plaza. And part of the responsibilities of the board will be to seek other corporate sponsorships and other fundraising activities for either specific capital projects in the project or for events and other operations.
Okay. And my other question was, part of what I see for the plaza here is very much similar to things that we have at Washington Park. For example, a splash pad, a stage, open fields. So why would we have pretty much the same thing so close to something that's right there? Why would you not upgrade what's there and then build something different?
We can quickly update we can talk about the splash pad. The Oasis water park at Washington Park is at a point where the city has to make a determination of whether it's going to invest substantial dollars into keeping that running or to locating it and designing it in a manner in which people are actually using those types of water facilities these days. And so we think that it's best to operate and maintain a facility of this type in the plaza rather than in the Oasis, the outdated and outmoded method that's being, basically offered today at the Oasis, for example.
I don't understand what's outdated about it. I know it's shut down
It's
right
at the end
now
of its
due
useful
to
life.
unforeseen circumstances.
It's at the end of its useful life.
After only like
10
less
years.
than 10 years.
10 years.
You would think that would have been a waste of money back then. Then wouldn't you have?
You have to make substantial improvements to those kinds of facilities after a period of 10 years because of the way it was designed and the nature of the facility.
And then also, I just want to point out that just last weekend, Pride Fest down at the beach took in about 3,000 people, where there was barely any parking there. So again, just the parking situation and shutting down 7th Street is like major red flags to people who live in this community.
So parking has come up in every stakeholder meeting and every meeting we've had on this project. Just about 4 years ago, the city conducted a study of parking in the entire Uptown Arts District downtown area. We know where every parking space is located between Green Street and Detroit Street on the south, Trail Creek on the north, Pine Street on the east, and Wabash on the west. And we know where opportunities exist for parking, sharing of parking after hours with different entities that don't need to use their parking after hours. We know whether parking is private or public. We know whether it's accessible or not. And we've identified opportunities for additional parking as the need arises. And there was a statement made with regard to the 500 spaces at the South Shore double track, South Shore Station facility. And that's an example of parking that's not going to be used after hours, that can be used for a facility like this. Parking sharing of that type happens all over communities, where we have parking garages that are used for one purpose during the day, but then are available for other uses at night, for example.
Well, as of right now, when there are events down there, there's a lack of parking. I guess if you're putting a parking garage 2.5 blocks away, you may or may not have use of it. But
and like I just got done saying, there are a lot of opportunities for parking where there are vast areas of parking lots that are not used after hours. We have some of those examples, some of those types of agreements already in place as a city. We're investigating, we're revisiting some of the ones that we had before. So we are looking at this comprehensively.
All right. Anyone else from the public?
I just want to say one last thing, just to make sure everyone's clear. We're not complaining about what the plaza is going to actually do. The reason we don't want the plaza, it's $11 million. It should be spent on something that the city actually needs, not just a fancy thing on the north end. Because the way that you're talking, Craig, is that we're having logistical issues with what specifically is going in the plaza. We don't want a plaza at all. We want $11 million to go towards something like free childcare, sidewalks and transportation. And I know you said some of these things will be in the plaza, but there's no way the plaza is going to build sidewalks and
we'll make sure that at the city council meeting, we'll make sure that we address when we talk to the city council in our presentation what we can and can't use TIF dollars for, and where we can and can't use TIF dollars as well.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. If you would like, but last comments, please just summarize.
Yeah, and that would be the final thing is that, and I would encourage people to look at California, where TIF and RDC as a structure for public investment emerged. They're in the process of unwinding and abolishing their entire TIF RDC system. The point of this thing was that somehow some sort of focused investment in a specific area would end up producing more economic activity than the taxes you put in. California is finding that it didn't work. It did not spur investment that wasn't going to happen anyway. In the retrospective, what they find is these programs have built a lot of things that didn't spur investment that wouldn't happen anyway. So when we're talking about where tax money goes, I'm speaking in opposition to what a TIF RDC is and what it does because of what it is. Because you're correct. You cannot use TIF funding to build sidewalks in Eastport. It's not possible. But why would you design a city that deliberately segregates its fiscal funds and makes them stay in an area? Like, the theory was that it would boost investment, but it's just not really playing out, and especially in a city like here, when you capture this funding in a specific area and then you need it somewhere else, it's not available to you. You have to spend it on something for the north end. I'm saying that's a bad way of running a government.
Rob, there's example after example after example in Indiana and Michigan City of where we've seen additional investment in our community, and as a result of TIF. Our assessed values in the TIF districts have gone up. The revenues that are collected within the TIF districts has gone up. So that's proof that the TIF districts are working.
Oh yeah, no, I get it. And because you take it as the point of government is to increase property value. I'm saying that increasing property value doesn't necessarily benefit anybody. Like, for example, if I take an apartment building and I upscale it from 50 affordable units to 10 luxury units, that's not economic act. There's the people that do the remodeling at the time, and then that's it. It's just bidding up the cost of an asset.
We've added jobs in this community due to TIF investment in the community.
Are you sure
that
they wouldn't have
we're
happened?
absolutely sure.
Certainly.
Okay. We'll see.
Well, and perhaps for
we've had presentations to the city council recently of new companies that have come to Michigan City because of TIF investment.
Exactly. And so if you've read the EDC's annual report for last year, it defines $400 million of new investment, and in total $1 billion of new improvements in the community. So, and I know for certain that people have approached us that didn't approach us in the past because they like the direction that Michigan City is going. To the point earlier that we should invest in these other things. I'm not arguing that, and I don't think anyone here is arguing that those aren't worthwhile causes. But the question is, what is within the statute that the Redevelopment Commission can actually invest in and what not?
And a lot of those folks got tax abatements as well.
No, not the ones we're talking
Not
about.
necess-
Not the ones we're talking about,
Yeah,
sorry.
not necessarily, and even the abatements still produce a net new tax increment for the city that we didn't have prior. So,
For minimum wage jobs, right?
No,
No.
for living wage jobs.
Yeah, living wage jobs, how many?
We're talking
Because
about,
there's 53% of people living in this city that are living paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
And $400 million is a really pretty high number, but you know what? Half of us are still struggling.
so places like Marbach Engineering and Starin, as well as the expansion of Harshside Foods,
And they're
those are
hiring
living,
Michigan
those are
City
living wage
residents. They're only
jobs.
hiring Michigan City
they're,
residents.
they're
Is that
hiring
correct?
qualified residents.
They're
or,
only hiring Michigan City residents, right?
Their
Because
emphasis
apparently
in
we're bringing jobs
giving
in,
Michigan
correct?
City residents a priority.
Okay.
And it still comes down to everyone's value proposition and to get the skills that are needed and the education to get a good paying job, right? That's we have a whole department that works on that here within the city, and that's what Clarence Hulse does with his team. So
So a lot of that money would be great to go to the AK Smith Center, wouldn't it?
some things can be spent on different projects, and this is good discussion to understand what the community really wants. We've had a lot of other outreach that gives some other priorities to what the city should be working on, and
Yeah.
we are legitimately trying to balance that. So I'm going to end.
We do give $600,000 a year annually to our community schools for
All right,
technology
so-
upgrades and making sure that we have one-to-one opportunities
Yeah, so,
within our
so our
community
children in
schools.
our community have tablets that they didn't have before the Redevelopment Commission awarded the tablets to the community. So, or the dollars. Over time, it was, I think over 4 years, it's $3.4 million.
It's a clause in state law where the redevelopment commission is allowed to spend TIF dollars outside TIF districts, and we exercise that ability.
All right. I think pretty much everyone from the public's commented that wants to comment. All right. Comments from the commission.
Well, Mr. Chairman, yes, if I could, there's a lot of valid points out there, and some points that aren't totally accurate. I really appreciate Mr. Johnson's comments because he has a great understanding that TIF dollars, and he emphasized it, can only be utilized certain ways. We have what we have in place in the city of Michigan City to work with and utilize, and how they can be used. A lot of great suggestions of opportunities that they could be utilized for in the community, but by law, we can only use them and utilize them certain ways. We can only use them in certain geographical areas by law, or we'd be breaking that law. Who is to say, and we've been working at a plaza, and there's been dozens and dozens of public meetings at a variety of different venues for over 3 years, acquiring land, doing demolitions. Who's to say that we can't have at this plaza community enrichment and philanthropic organizations working with our youth? This plaza can be what this city makes of this plaza. This plaza could be a great opportunity for our residents. If people team up and work together, not work against each other, everything that's been mentioned in here can happen at that plaza. Assisting people with health care, working with a partnership with the school system. There is going to be an indoor component to it. We hear all the time that the community, and I mean the entire community, wants some roller skating. We can have roller skating. They do want winter activities down there. There could be an opportunity to help the homeless and incorporate them in this. This is what this city and Michigan City can make of this plaza. It can actually be such a great success that 5 years from now somebody could be saying, wow, look what Michigan City did with this. Look what they partnershiped with the various organizations in town and achieved a lot of what we're talking about tonight. So I just want to say that, there's a wide variety of opinions in the community. At certain meetings, you hear certain opinions from this segment of the community or that segment of the community. So you have to weigh those. Because somebody, if they want it painted red and this other group wants it painted blue, it's going to get painted. Because that's what you have to do. You have to make decisions. But what I'm saying is we could have vouchers for people that are low income that can utilize some of the opportunities. You know, we hear that there's not, I don't agree with this, but we hear all the time that there's not a lot for our youth to do in this community. There's all kinds of organizations looking for volunteers, and we have national parks, Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, organization after organization that are offering opportunities and looking for volunteers all the time. So I just say that we've been working at a plaza for a long time. It is going to be a city council decision ultimately, but this plaza could be what the community wants to make it, and it can offer and address every issue that was brought up tonight. Whether you agree with TIF dollars and redevelopment zones and TIF zones, we're past that right now. We're working with the system that we have in place. And like I say, there's several of the issues that were talked about tonight that would be great to address, but we can't legally use TIF dollars for those. So ultimately, the city council will be making this decision. And you're right, we have a lot of priorities in this city, and we have to work within a budget, and we have to use monies as we are legally allowed to utilize them, and it's a big responsibility. So, thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Other comments from the commissioners? All right, I appreciate that, Mayor. I thought this was well done. We will try to address all the questions. Some of the what I struggle with a little bit this evening is that although we've even hired people to help us get more interaction with the community, the people, evidently the people we're talking to just aren't listening, that in fact we do want this to be a community plaza, and we are setting up a structure that it actually will get community input and it will evolve. Nobody up here can predict that this thing is going to be the nirvana for everything. And that it's going to do everything we want it to do. Hopefully it'll do more than we want it to do. But the other thing is been not even discussed this evening is that our downtown has been falling apart since 1967 when the Marquette Mall was built.
Since Franklin Square.
Well, that came after that, and that was not designed with community input and was not designed to have a board that actually worked to actually make it a success, and it actually closed off access to local businesses instead of helping them be successful. So there's no perfect answer to anything here, and the reason we were able to acquire some of the building is because I get the argument all the time, well, why doesn't private industry or private business come in and buy these buildings? Because they can't make money in it. They're going to go someplace where they can make money. And a deteriorated building that's fallen apart and is not attended to, and that's exactly what we had in the art space for years and years. The previous owner wouldn't sell it to the city. Ultimately, the Redevelopment Commission and the city worked together to purchase the building, and then we worked with our local contractor, Ton and Blank, to rehab it, and now we have Artist Loft down there, and it complements both the downtown and the arts community also. So I think many people believe that was a good investment of city dollars and community dollars, and we want to have more things like that come to fruition. So any other comments from the commissioners or anyone? Yes.
Don, I'd just add that, we could have job fairs in this plaza once a month. I mean, with our local manufacturing, and because there is a disconnect rather with some of the job opportunities that are out there and available in the skill level. So I mean, there's nothing to say we couldn't have health fairs out there with local healthcare systems and things, and the opportunities for less fortunate people to just getting your blood pressure and things. I mean, there's so many things that a plaza can do if we're just dedicated and we'll work together as a community, as an entire community. So it's, you hear often about we need to build a rec center. A rec center for our community would be over $20 million, be twice as much as this. Much of what would be in a rec center is already within our school system buildings that would be utilized, because you ask people what they want. Weight rooms, we've got weight rooms. Basketball courts, we got basketball courts. Yes, there could be upgrades to more swimming. I understand that. But you wouldn't be able to make that decision at this point anyway, because that would have to go to a referendum. if it was going to be something that's going to be $15-20 million. So it's an opportunity as a community that we could make something out of this, that everybody would be welcome and utilize it. So I mean, I guess keep going down the educational partnerships and the enrichment opportunities. If we do it right, that could be offered to all of our citizens, and they would all be welcome. And I think we took great efforts to try to reach out to the community to do that, maybe more than I've ever seen before, where we reached out to every corner and segment of our community to get opinions, all the way from youth, high school, to seniors. And I mean, you can do the best you can, and I think we have to that point. We're hearing more opinions today. I think Don mentioned that there'll be more questions at the city council meetings and during this process, and hopefully we'll have the further answers that I know you were taking notes, and we can review the video of the questions and points that were made tonight. So that's it, Don.
All right, so then I'm going to, I guess, close the public section. So do I need to ask for a motion to do that? Well, it's okay. Okay, I'm just going to close the public hearing portion of the meeting, and we'll go on to what's the pleasure of the commission.
With regard to resolution 3-19.
Yes, with regard to resolution 3-19.
Chairman, I'd move to adopt resolution 319.
Support.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Oppose.
All right, and I guess since we need to have 3 in the affirmative in order to pass anything, I will vote in favor, and the resolution passes. So, and we'll be on to the city council on the 16th, and we will do our best to get answers to the questions that were made this evening. And thank you all for coming. All right, let's move on to the item number 13, resolution 419. Phil, would you like to run over this too? This is an opportunity to save the city some money.
Correct. So the resolution before you, members of the commission, this is the refunding of the Lafayette Barker bonds. And again, this was similar structure to the bonds we were just referring to. So we had redevelopment authority, and the commission was the lessee. And under the original lease, which was done in 2010, that was the Lafayette and Barker project that was financed. Just refreshing the memory of the commission, this is the stormwater outfall and the first phase of the Lafayette Street storm sewer from Trail Creek along 8th Street to Lafayette Street. The bonds were originally $9,530,000 in principal amount, and that amount over time has been reduced to the outstanding principal amount of $6,655,000 at this point. Favorable conditions in the market present a refinancing opportunity that should produce significant savings for the commission and for the city. And it is estimated that that is approximately $600,000 in savings. The resolution before you approves an addendum to the original lease, which would allow you to reduce the annual lease rental to reflect the corresponding reduction in debt service as a result of the refinancing. The resolution also approves the issuance of the bonds. Similarly, as with the last resolution, the Redevelopment Authority took up this proposal on July 1st and approved it. The refunding bonds will continue to be payable from a special benefits tax as a backup, and would state to you that those taxes have not been levied. It was projected that they would not be, and they have not been levied over the course of the last 9 years. Instead, the north side.
So we didn't have to fall back on the city.
You did not have to fall back over the last 9 years.
And never have.
And never have. And you reasonably expected to, as you did with the last bonds, you would reasonably expect that you would not have to pay for them, and you did not have to pay for them from a special benefits tax. They were paid for by the north side TIF. If the commission approves this tonight, It would be anticipated that the refinancing would be closed in the late fall of this year.
And
And
piece is,
does this go on to City Council after tonight as well?
This one goes to, yes, it goes to City Council.
I would anticipate that we'll have it the same night as.
Correct, same night.
Other resolution, at least that's the current plan.
Yeah.
All right, any questions for, Phil? What's the pleasure of the commission?
Move to approve.
Support.
Seconded, any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. So we'll be saving the city $600,000 on the last bond. All right, item number 14. I don't see Ruth here. Craig, or
I can just quickly update members of the commission and the public. As you mentioned earlier, we're essentially reopening the process of ultimately seeking a developer for the former Memorial Hospital site. And as part of that, we will be very soon sending out a request for proposals, essentially, to a list of developers to try to ultimately arrive at a recommendation of a developer to work with to finally complete that project. So we're working alongside the team at NCI and the rest of the members of that consulting team to get this done quickly and as efficiently as possible, and anticipate that RFP going out very soon.
right, and so the anticipation would be that we would potentially approving a new developer in September or October.
Hopefully pursuing negotiations with a chosen developer by the end of the summer.
Okay. All right, any questions for Craig on that? Comments? Okay, item number 15, Jay. Washington Park traffic circle.
Good evening. My name's Jay Neese. I'm with SEH Engineering. And I think I'm going to pass out what may be the last progress report on the Washington Park project.
Not that we're going to quit making progress, we finished it, right?
That's exactly right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Okay, I am in the progress of doing my final review and markup on the plan set. That's what I have with me tonight, and that's probably what you've seen if you've watched me over there work on during the course of the last 2 hours. So right now it's in my hands, my responsibility to mark the drawings up and to check the specifications. My goal is tonight is to have a final set of the plans and specifications complete and finalized for delivery to the city on June 22nd. I'm sorry, July 22nd. Yeah. Yes. So,
all right.
I don't know if you have any questions or not. I know there was something on the agenda about the certificate of substantial completion for the west parking lot, but that's been submitted. As you know, the west parking lot looks great.
It does.
We've had a lot of comments on
Hopefully it
its
helps with the
usefulness.
Pride event. It's parking, you know.
Exactly. So I believe, and forgive me, I don't recall, I think we also submitted the certificate of final completion on that project. If we didn't, you'll receive it.
I know we did substantial. I'm not sure about final.
I'll double check
Yeah.
to make sure. But the parking lot is finished. So
All right.
okay, that's it.
Any questions for Jay? Good project. I think it's a beautiful enhancement to the park, and thanks for your good work. And
Okay, you're welcome.
appreciate your diligent and accurate reporting on progress. So thank you.
You're more than welcome. Thank you.
All right. Item number 16, Mr. Cernak.
I sent to you last week a proposed purchase agreement for the property with the common address of 1215 East 2nd Street. It actually includes 3 different parcels, a big structure, and then 2 adjoining parcels that we have been talking with, I guess, the property owner, Tellus Properties LLC, for the better part of the past year. We were waiting on completion of environmental studies. The studies have come back as no contamination. We have done appraisals, and pursuant to statute, the mean of the 2 appraisals was for $345,000. That was our offer. That has been accepted, subject to the approval of this commission. We have talked, or I've talked further with their counsel as to when a closing date would be. They currently have a tenant in the building that is on a month-to-month basis. They are giving notice, assuming that this commission approves this. Tonight, they will give notice to their tenant tomorrow as to 30 days. So we're looking at closing occurring on August 15, 2019. I have ordered for a title search. I've not received that back yet, but everything I believe is that there are no liens on the property. The only debt is incurred by a family member. I'm getting a release of that from the property owner. So basically the only change from what I sent to you over the last week was the closing date of August 15th. No other changes to the proposed purchase agreement. And before you tonight then would be whether you want to approve this or not approve that. As we sit right now, we're not at anything. So,
Okay, so in essence, if we approve this evening, you'll go through with closing. And are they authorizing me to sign, or is that
yes,
tonight?
you're authorizing Don to sign the purchase agreement for closing on August 15th, and then we'll go to the August. We will have money requisitioned for the August commission meeting that'll be available for closing on August 15th. Yep.
All right. What's the pleasure of the commission?
Motion to approve 1215 East 2nd Street.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. All right, another exciting project coming up, and speaking of good paying jobs, item number 17, the Bozak Honda project. And so, I don't know, Alan, do you want to kind of give us an update?
I talked with Tim Larson of Larson Danielson. He was going to be out of town today. I said that really wasn't necessary. We haven't really gone forth with the project. You've already approved the money for the project. We've also approved and made an award to 2 contractors to do the demolition, to do our portion of a project using round numbers. I want to say it was $380,000 for a $4 million project, if I remember correctly.
Right. So less than 10%.
Very round figures there, but so the only thing we really have tonight, quite frankly, we've already done the notice of award. We've already approved, so I do have 2 notice of awards for Don to sign for Babilla for the roofing part, and D&M Excavating for the destruction of the building, as well as earthwork and replacing the culverts. These were proposed to you at the last meeting, and you guys approved them. So technically, what we need to do is we need to do the notice of award, even though we've approved those. We have the formal documents for Don to sign, and then we've also have to execute the 2 contracts tonight. And then the final thing, we really don't need action because we've already taken action on that. And then the third thing is the license agreement, which is a pretty standard thing that allows us by statute for the Redevelopment Commission to expend any kind of public money on a project. We need to have an interest in the property, whether it's outright ownership, which obviously in this case we do not have, but we would have a licensing agreement which allows us to basically have an ownership for the sole purpose of doing the work as we're contracted to do and paying for the work that we're contracted to do, i.e. the $380,000, and then upon the conclusion of the project, the license agreement would terminate. So,
and we'll turn over the asset back.
That's correct. That's correct. So the only thing I need you to do tonight is, like I say, where we are. Oh, I guess I probably should give you one more update from Tim. There's been an asbestos survey on the existing building that's to be torn down. That came back clean, so they've given the notice to IDEM as required by statute. That there is no asbestos in there, and so the expectation is that the demolition would start sometime in the next 10 days to 2 weeks. Whatever, that's where the progress on that is. But the only thing you really need to act on tonight is to authorize Don to enter in the license agreement for the reasons I just stated.
Any questions for Alan? What's the pleasure of the commission?
Move for the chairman be able to move into the agreement.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? And assuming you're okay with this, Greg? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
One last thing on that Bozak project. They understand that starting next month, when they actually start doing some of the work, they will be here and give you monthly updates on the project.
Thank you. And, okay, report by legal counsel.
Finally, I also sent you a memo last week with regards to the Trail Creek litigation. We had mediation the last Thursday in June. And I guess I'm not going to try to be too cynical since I'm talking about my profession, but defense attorneys always try to come up with every possible excuse as to why that's being asserted by a plaintiff is not true. The latest thing that came up was, or that they have pro-offered, are two things actually. And so you have two change orders from August Mack that I sent to you last week. Let me just take the change order 6 first, because there were 3 different options on that. Basically what this is for, the change order 6, is that the Bagley Corporation continues to assert there are different sources of the contamination on this property. There is, like there was just about last year at this time, there is a gap in part of the plume that is further on downstream between one area where we have found contaminants, one other area where we haven't. As was the case last year when the contamination was discovered in the residential area, it was attributed not to different sources of contamination or not to anything other than a 10-year-old study that was done with less sophisticated equipment, less sophisticated monitoring equipment. So the goal behind, or the request for change order number 6 is 3 different options that would allow us to explain that. Basically putting different monitoring systems in this targeted area with the obvious belief that we will not only find contamination in these areas, but that the contamination can be directly attributed to Bagley. And it would be a 2-step process, as was indicated. The first would be only for the residential area. The second would be for a residential area as well as further on downstream on East Michigan Boulevard. That second option is for $104,000, $104,700. The first one is for $44,000. Number 3 obviously includes number 1 as well. So what we're looking at there is being able to, again, do further testing on these sites within a very short order, because we do go back to mediation on August 5th, testing and getting results back. And again, the $44,000 is obviously necessary. The other $80,000 may or may not be necessary. I'm sorry, the other $60,000 may or may not be necessary depending upon what we find. However, rather than coming back 2 different times or requesting a special meeting, the request being made of our council down in Indianapolis is to approve the $104,700, not to exceed that amount. I guess any questions?
And who would trigger spending the extra $60,000? Is that your
It would
decision?
be depending upon what's found out during the original 44,000 testing and what is then shared with Bagley's their experts.
I just want to make sure if we're going to have a 2-step process that someplace in the middle of it you have an opportunity to say yes or no.
Absolutely, yes.
So, yes. And I'm assuming you're recommending approval.
Recommending approval for not to exceed $104,700. And again, I want to point out this $104,700 also gets included within the demand that we're making.
To be reimbursed.
To be
Right.
reimbursed, that's
So-
correct.
So this is to prove our case and to potentially have a return on our claim.
That's correct.
By an expert. All right, what's the pleasure of the commission? I know we're getting out of pleasure tonight, I can just tell.
Move to approve.
Support.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you.
Change order 7, again, an argument brought up during mediation by Begley had to do with a different option for cleaning up the contamination that's already been discovered and anything that may future be discovered. They have used a model that, quite frankly, I don't understand because of the math involved, but basically it's an established tool that's been used by experts in this field to run a series of tests. These are what we expect, these are what we think will happen, this is the estimated cost of that. This is the same model that was used for actual contamination cleanup to cost somewhere in the area of $4 million plus. The Begley Corporation during the mediation brought up, well, we believe it would be less expensive if instead of doing a full cleanup, we would just do a monitoring to make sure there was no expansion of the plume. First of all, the first step on that is going to be requiring IDEM's approval, and secondly, to sign off on that when it was actually finished. The only thing that August Mack or whomever the city were to employ for that monitoring or the containment of the plume would do nothing more than just simply monitor for an extended period of time to make sure the plume itself was not moving, expanding, doing anything other than decreasing in its contamination. So, again, going back to what I said before, that is another argument that is being presented. It's another argument that we can anticipate will occur at trial in the event that we don't have an agreement with the mediation. And it's the what's being done there is just, like I say, running the same model we've already done as it relates to full cleanup, this way as it relates to maintaining it in a certain area. So what I'm asking for tonight, or what is being asked of the Commission tonight, is to approve change order 7 in the amount of $7,800 solely for the purpose of being able to run this model again so we can make a determination as to is this more expensive, is this less expensive if we were to choose this, if this option were to be chosen by IDEM, approved by IDEM, and approved by us, or let's make it clear. I would not expect us as plaintiffs to expect this to accept this option. We do have to, though, as the cost of litigation, to identify, okay, here's the corresponding cost that goes to that. I'm not asking you to approve this as an option to be done only from the viewpoint for the purposes of the mediation that we have on August 5th, or in the event of a no settlement, that the trial that comes up in October, because again, we're going to need to have this answer. We anticipate that.
So this is more or less preparation again.
Correct.
And I think the sentiment of the commission in general is we want to get this property redeveloped and back on the tax rolls as soon as possible.
As soon as possible.
So if monitoring is a longer, I guess it takes longer to redevelop or costs more to redevelop, I'm sure we're not going to be very interested in that. So
I don't think we would, but again, so that's not what the idea that's being done by change order 7. Change order 7 is only from the viewpoint that allows for a cost comparison, an apples to apples comparison, that this is what it costs to actually clean it up, this is what it's going to cost to monitor. Begley seems to believe that to monitor it's going to cost less. August Max seems to believe probably not. In fact, it may in fact cost more, and this will allow us to make that case. So again, it's twofold. One is for the purpose of the mediation in August, but in the event we don't get settlement there, it's also going to be used at trial so that they can throw this at us saying, well, why don't we just do this? And we can say, well, we're not going to do that because it's going to cost more money and it's not a satisfactory solution to what we have. So the request tonight is to approve change order 7 in the amount of $7,800 for additional testing.
okay, any questions for Alan? Pleasure of the commission.
Move to approve.
So we're asking for another $7,800 just to do further testing. It's not testing as much as it is for running numbers, running an algorithm. The same algorithm was used for to determine future costs as it related to contamination cleanup. This one would be for contamination containment.
It's a modeling process, right?
I second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, anything else?
Nothing else.
Mr. Phillips.
I don't have anything else to add this evening.
All right, we have another opportunity for public comment. Any comments from the public? Councilman Stimley.
Good evening tonight. This was more of a statement I wanted to make tonight. I've been getting a lot of calls about the Elston Legacy apartment and what's happening to the property. I'm just a little upset that I can understand you can't make all the meetings, but that NCI their consulting firm didn't have a representative tonight to give us an update. Only because last time the woman was here, she stated, she'll have these different companies or different investors of at least 10, I believe, by August or September, to give us a briefing of that. So, I wish there would have been someone tonight to represent the company that would have came and so I can give an update to the public. I just wanted to make that statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I will assure you we are honored and our interest is in getting this thing going as quickly as possible with the best qualified person to actually make it come together. So and that's why we're hiring Ruth, is to actually help us make a great decision relative to moving it forward. So, other comments from the public? Is this an IU grad or?
My granddaughter goes.
Oh, wonderful! Great.
My name is Todd Bullis. I'm from the FOP. Per order, please. And most of you know that we lost our lodge January of last year. Unfortunately, we can't build on that property. So I befriended Mr. Phillips a little bit and Mr. York in trying to help locate maybe properties and maybe buildings that something we could be able to use. Obviously, we became very interested in the Cleveland property. We've gone through the process of thank Mr. Cernick for explaining a lot of the laws and a lot of things we have to go through and how things had to progress, which I believe we've done all those things now. And if I'm understanding correctly, we need to sit down with maybe one of the commission's representative, and I don't know if Mr. Cernick, and maybe try to make some discussions on on the property. See if it was. I mean, we're very interested in it. We're hoping it could work out. Our membership's getting a little antsy. Obviously, we haven't had a building for 19 months. So I thought I'd introduce myself. I know Mr. Cernick from court. I didn't know if he remembered who I was, but yeah, no, he does now. But I just wanted to maybe mention that we really would like to get going if we can. If it's something possible that we can. It doesn't make any difference who calls me. Mr. Cernick has my number. Mr. Phillips has my number. I just would like to. I just like to get going if we can.
Pretty much we're going to have that go through Mr. Cernick, and Mr. Kowalski's also involved in this. So
Yeah, Pat and I have talked, and Pat has a couple of other ideas that he wants to share with the commission to make that happen.
Okay.
I guess you can. Well, I guess we don't want to talk about specifics yet because
No, I mean, that's
with other property owners. But clearly, the intent, at least from what Pat and I have talked about, is how do we make this happen? And
Okay.
we've got a couple of steps before that.
Like I said, we'd be more than happy to sit down, with 2 or 3 of our members, obviously.
I'd love to.
And you name the date. I've just recently retired after 40 years, so I'm available all the time now.
Yeah, I'll grab your number after.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sir,
Thank you.
could I get a question? The existing FOP property off of Johnson Road, do you guys still own that?
Yes, we do.
Okay, and I understand that it's unbuildable for what
Correct.
you would need and everything. Does that have? Does that property go all the way to Trail Creek?
It goes, whatever that line is, yes.
Where
it
the
goes.
water is, I'm talking about.
Yes.
It goes down to the creek.
Yes. I mean, there's a buffer whatever the state owns in
Yeah.
there, but we go,
Yeah, and I know the city in the past has purchased some land and through grants and things out in that area. I'm just thinking that it could be a public access point, possibly working with the Department of Natural Resources or something.
And I
You
agree.
know.
I like opening this stuff for a bigger idea.
Yeah.
well, we'd be more than happy to discuss. I mean, I have no idea what we're gonna
I
do
just
with
want
that
to
property.
interject that when Attorney Cernick and them talk, that maybe it's something that we could consider out there. Anytime we can get more public access off of Trail Creek, I think is an opportunity for
I'm sure
the
we'd
city.
we'd be open to anything like that, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for hanging in there with us too this evening. I appreciate that. All right. Any other public comments? Other comments from the public? Other comments from the public? I don't see any other. Okay. Commissioner comments. Any comments from commissioners?
Chairman, just as a sense of levity here at the end of the session, I thought I'd share with you this evening the thrill to be involved in the request for the new expanded area for the feline house. Because many years ago, when I sat in Mr. Phillips' seat, I had a reputation for tearing down what were then the cat houses in the north end of Michigan City at the same time I was paid to build one in the zoo.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll make. Yeah, that's any other comments from the commissioners? I think I won't try to top that. So I do sincerely want to thank everybody for coming this evening. I know it's great to get this public input, and I love seeing the energy and people that really want to do what's right here. And I'm very certain that everyone on this commission is trying to do the very best they can to make this a great place. So thank you all for coming, and with that, can motion to adjourn. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.